welcome to all of you and to all of our wonderful guests here this night. This is a very exciting night that the Adult Christian Education Committee has been really looking forward to for many, many months. We start talking about this back in September last summer, that we wanted to make sure that we closed out our year once again with this wonderful panel of storytellers, people we love from our congregation, and a special, special word of thanks to Peggy, of course, who has been recording their stories. And those are available, and she will tell us more about that in just a few moments. This is our last Aperture, as I said, and we are I'm going to actually invite the Adult Education Committee to stand so we can thank you for your good work. Some of them are here, they're not all here. So this is our last Aperture, but we do have some upcoming events that we do want you to know about. The first one is coming up on May 3rd, and it features our very wonderful favorite TV and Presbyterian personality, Fred Rogers. And he will be greeting us at the next gift, Generations in Faith Together, which is a gathering for all ages. It will be May 3rd, and I hope that many of you will join us on that day, because our children and our families come. Our very youngest children will actually be singing a song for us. So I hope you will come. It'll be very, very special. The other thing I want you to start getting ready for is, I mentioned this last month, we are starting a Westminster Reads group. And that is going to be this summer, beginning of June. We will have 3 gatherings to talk about this book, There Is No Place for Us, Working and Homeless in America, by Brian Goldstone. Chris has been talking to him, and he is moving here. So we are actually hoping that he will be able to come and be a special guest. We can't promise you, but we're pretty close to being able to welcome him this fall as one of our kickoff speakers. So it would be really helpful for you to read this book and come ready to talk. I've ordered some books today, so you can get them right here, really easy. Okay? Excellent. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to read a little bit of wisdom from Fred Rogers. Here's what he says. I find out more and more every day how important it is for people to share their memories. Thank you for sharing your memories tonight. We are very, very grateful. So let's say a word of prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for lives lived, for the memories that we treasure, for the sorrow, but also the joys of our lives. We thank you that we have a safe place to share these stories, that in this place we can receive them and learn together, laugh together, maybe even cry a little bit together, because that's what we do as a community of God's people. Thank you, Lord. Amen. Okay.
Welcome. I better get my glasses in place here. I wrote things down so I wouldn't forget. So I'll be reading a little bit here. But these are the folks who are going to be doing most of the talking once I get my little blurb out at the beginning. Ralph and Sue McCaughan, Marge Enberg, Susan and Jim Ketch, and Dailey Derr. A big thank you to you all for doing an interview with me. It was so fun to hear your stories then, and I've pulled out a few. There's a lot more to it than this that you can go and look at with a link, and I've got a list of links back by the food So I'm repeating what I have in my notes. So you're going to hear a few stories shared during their interviews that have been recorded about their childhoods, their families, their vocations, their faith, and some fond memories of Westminster. The panelists are longtime leaders here. They are educators, youth leaders, officers, musicians, and mission participants. You can look at those full recorded interviews. I just said that, so I won't repeat that. But one thing about it is, they're not all real short, but I think you'll find it's time well spent, because these folks will fill you with hope at a time when we can all use it. In addition, you can chat with the panelists afterward, and in light of that, I came up with some questions that many of them we won't get to today. They're on an orange poster board there, but there are a few questions there that you can ask, like, who is Buttercup? And a few others that these guys know what some of them, one or more of them would know what it is. Also, please take a look at the list of others who've also done interviews. Jean and Kenzie just did one not too long ago, and we had folks from a year before who did them, so there are 18 people who, can you hear me? 18 who have been interviewed between all of the interviews. So now, without more, let's get started. I have a question for Dailey. Would you like to tell us about events in 1948 and 1949, when you were 7 or 8 years old, that started you on a lifelong quest to understand God and Jesus?
Yeah, I'm going to back up a little bit. My father was in the shipyard in Wilmington as an electrical inspector. I was born 3 weeks before Pearl Harbor, but I don't remember it.
Dailey, I was doing it too. I think if you pick the mic up a little.
Better? I'm sorry. I'm not going to repeat, okay? We had blackout street lights in Wilmington, black shades on our windows, and black top of the headlights, because German U-boats were in the outside of Wilmington. I only give you that background. I have a twin brother who was born a few minutes after I was, so I didn't read him or anything like that. We moved to Burlington after the war. My father was in the electrical contracting business, and I went to vacation Bible school and Sunday school. I was bought in completely. We were baptized on a Sunday afternoon in the church in Burlington, where Carrie has been affiliated with. If she's still, I don't know. First of all, my brother and I had polio in the summer of 1948, so we were institutionalized in effect in Greensboro, although our home was Burlington, and the parents could come once a week. And I never even thought I would ever be able to go home. They came one day to get us, and I was nauseated, but I knew I couldn't throw up because I couldn't go home. Okay. We came home around Thanksgiving. We had a great Christmas, unbelievable Christmas. My father died 3 months later of 2 heart attacks in a week. He was 43. I was 6. My brother ran out the back door when they took us into the living room to tell us he died at home. They told me that he'd gone to live with Jesus. They also told me I was now the man of the house. So I've been trying to figure out Jesus ever since that morning. Why was it a good thing for him to go live with Jesus and leave me behind? But I've been affiliated with the church all my life, even to the point that I had a fellowship to go to Crozier Theological Seminary my senior year in college. I had a fellowship to go to GW School of Government in 1964, the same year, and a little tuition scholarship to law school. The campus minister at Westminster, at the University Church in Chapel Hill, said I emoted about the School of Government in Washington, which was in Lexington, and I was in student politics in UNC and involved actually in some elections, so that's why I chose that. So I've been on a quest. The word you use is very appropriate. I've voiced this in sojourners and other venues and so forth with the pastors. I'm here in Westminster because I'm hoping to find comfort, faith, whatever you want to call it, as I move forward.
Thank you. So I'll ask another question. This one's for Sue and Ralph. Tell us about how you met and your journeys from Florida to Duke, and back to Florida, and then back to Duke and Durham. Oh, yep, I need that, sorry.
Well, Sue chased me all around.
Sounds like Sue.
And if you believe that.
That's not what happened. He worked it out. This was a gentlemanly thing to do. He saw me on campus with a friend of his from Fort Lauderdale, where he grew up and went to high school. And we walked, she and I, together from the bus to classes, different classes, every Thursday. So he asked her, "Who's that person with you?" And she said, "Oh," she introduced me. She told him. He said, "Well, would you introduce me to her?" So one day we're walking, and this young gentleman in a Navy uniform, by the way, I'm dressed for this part, came up and she introduced us, and we said hi, and then he walked away. And I had no idea that it was arranged, but I'm glad she did that.
So then, that was my senior year and Sue's sophomore year. And I graduated. I was in Navy ROTC and got a commission and went into active duty. I served on a destroyer as a supply officer for a couple of years during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And when I got out of the service in '63, we got married. Sue had just graduated. And I had been admitted to law school and came back to Duke Law School. Among my classmates was Elizabeth Aldrich's father, Dave Peters, good friend. Rest in peace, Dave. And Alex Denson, who's also an active member of the church, and Jim Maxwell, who was an active member. Rest in peace, Jim. And after about a year, you went back to school.
I taught for a year.
You taught for a year and a half.
Downtown.
And then Sue was a Spanish major, and I do remember this part. She applied to teach Spanish and was told by the superintendent, "Well, that's not important. Nobody speaks Spanish."
Could you teach French?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody uses French.
So we Sue went back and got a graduate degree in counseling, master's in education and counseling. And I finished law school. Then we moved to Florida.
We moved to Fort Lauderdale, where his father was in a firm and he had a job. And we thought we would just live there forever. I grew up in Lake Worth, 30 miles north, so that was home. And we did live there for about 15 years, became involved in the Presbyterian church, which happened to be 2 blocks from our first house. And then we came back for reunions periodically, and every time we came back here, we would hate to leave. It just felt, it had become home, and it had so much that drew us, the trees and the hills and the seasons, and just here. So we just decided after the 15 years, when we were totally ensconced in everything there, we needed to come back. So we did. And it was, people would say, wasn't that hard? Wasn't that? And we feel kind of guilty saying no. No, it wasn't. And so we came back and built a life here that we never looked back, never regretted.
One thing I'll add is that the friends we made in Fort Lauderdale at First Presbyterian Church we still Zoom with them every Friday at 5 o'clock. Now, there are not many of us left, but we do enjoy their company still.
Okay, oh, yep, I'll take it for a minute. My next question is for Marge. Please tell us about exploration adventures with your husband Denny and your kids when Denny was an interpretive ranger at the national parks and forests and on camping trips. You want this one?
It's good to see everybody, and I have tremors, so if this starts wiggling, you'll know why. It's not the microphone's fault, it's mine. Denny was a professor at North Carolina Central University while he was working on his PhD, and so he would have the summers off. And I was teaching at Durham Academy, and I could also have the summers off if I wanted to. And so he had a friend that was working for the National Park Service and at the Wright Brothers Memorial, and he encouraged Denny to apply for a job. Denny's major was geography and geology, and that's what his PhD from UNC is for him. So he did, and he got accepted, which meant that he had to leave as soon as college was done, mid-May, and then he would be down there until Labor Day. And so he would go, and then when the kids were done with school at the end of May, we would join him. And so we were at the Wright Brothers. Any of you been to the Wright Brothers? Yeah. Okay, you remember some of those lectures you probably listened to?
No.
Well, they did those regularly every day, and there was a staff and the interpretive staff was probably about maybe 4 people, 4 young men and women. And so we were there from 1975 to 1978, 4 years we were there. And at that time, and I don't know if you all are familiar with Jockey's Ridge State Park. Okay, that was the day that the first year we were there in 1975, that was the year it became a state park. And there was a big conflict between developers and the people that wanted to have it a state park. Because I remember protesting with those people. And they had an SOS, which was Save Our Sand Dune. And so that was a big deal, and we participated in that. But anyway, as part of Denny's training, they had to come up with programs themselves that would be for families. That was a time when the parks had a lot of money, and they wanted to really emphasize the family aspect of folks coming and join. And a couple of things that he did is that he decided to develop a kite program for kids, and these were made out of, they were called sleds. They were made out of those huge garbage bags. So sometimes when the rangers were talking to the adults, he would take the families, the kids, go up on the top of the hill, and they'd make these kites out of the garbage bags and then fly them. So that was one of the things he did. Also, as a reenactment, any of you ever see the beach apparatus drill? It was called BAD. Well, this is where they reenacted how they used to in the 1900s and before rescue the surf people in the boats that went aground and bring them to shore. It involved a Lyle gun, which is a small cannon, and a hawser, a great big hawser that they had put around this I'll call it a contraption. I don't know, probably had a nautical name, but I don't remember that. And so they would do this every Thursday at Coquina Beach, which was near Nag's Head, and it was where there was a shipwreck. And our daughter, the first year we went, was 4, and our son was 6. And what they would do is they would shoot this cannon off with a rope attached to it, a lifesaver that had a pair of shorts built into it. And they would shoot it out to the bow of the ship, and there were surfmen at the same time taking one of these dinghies out there to help anybody that was, close enough to get to shore. And our kids, excuse me, would be the rescue people. And they would bring him in this breeches boy and haul him into shore with ropes and whatnot. And so there were other programs like that. They had wonderful programs for families. And the kids in I, once Denny was off working, we would get in the car and go and take advantage of them. They had sailing in the Sound with rangers, fishing with the rangers, surfing with the rangers, all sorts of things that you could do. And so it was, and we lived there for the whole summer. And so it was a wonderful experience.
And other locations too, right?
Yes, yes.
Lots of different
Spent a
parts.
summer at Lassen Volcanic National Park. Let's see. Sleeping Bear Dunes in Michigan. And Ocracoke, specifically, that was our last one we did. I think it was for 7 years we did that.
So, Jim and Susan, tell us about how you met, how you met at Indiana State University and how you made your way to Chapel Hill, gambling on a 1-year position at UNC for Jim that turned into 40 plus years.
Well, I'll talk about okay. So I'll talk about the meeting part of it, because that's dating and girls stuff. That's fun. Jim was a year older, and he was about to graduate in education and music, and I was a year behind in education and special education, and so we had a common teacher who was Dr. Gibbs, who was in charge of many of the educational classes, and she had told both of us, there's somebody I think you should meet. There's somebody I think you should meet, which we never did. But she kept saying, there's a person that I know you really like. I don't know if she told you that, but
She did.
she was looking out for me. Anyway, and we did meet because I was working at the circulation desk at the University Library, and he came up and he said, have you got a day planner? The old-fashioned kind, not the fancy. And I said, oh yeah. And he goes, well, here, let me write in when we should go out. So then we were at the department store in the mall. I was with some other friends, and he was working in the stereo department. And he said, I think I know you from campus. I said, yeah. And what's your name? And he said, Ketch. Oh, well, that's odd. And I said, well, what's your last name? He said, Ketch. And I said, your name is Ketch? Ketch? It was getting worse. So anyway, a couple of days passed, and he was getting ready to leave, which he could tell you more of, to go to Las Vegas. He was going to play the club circuit. But eventually we did go out, and he brought his best friend, Joey, to our first date. And then he also, the second date, he said, we just walked the campus. I'm in a hoodie and pigtails, nothing fancy. And he said, oh, I got some friends that are playing. And I thought we'd go by and play or hear them. I'm thinking groups, members of the Beatles and the Turtles, who knows. And he says, yeah, come on, it'll be fine. It was a formal dance at the Elks Club. And I am still dressed in overalls, a green hoodie, pigtails. I was horribly humiliated. And he says, it's okay. The guys in the band, oh, it's Ketch. Did you bring your horn? Well, of course I brought my horn. He's up on stage, and I stayed out in the audience and danced with men in tuxes. Being married to Jim is truly Ketch chaos. It truly is. And at long last, a whole year later, we got married. So we met right before he graduated, and he could tell you that part of what he decided to do instead of go to Las Vegas. And we were married a year later and had our first teaching jobs. But the thing that was so fun, we invited Dr. Gibbs, our professor, to the wedding, and she said, oh, You found each other. The ones that I had hoped would meet.
That's twice as long as what's on the video.
New story.
You can't put it in front of an audience. I don't have a whole lot more to add about that. Although so my senior year, I always wanted to teach. I just had an affinity towards teaching, but the trumpet became more and more and more important, and the more my horizons spread, the more I wanted to fly towards those horizons. So my senior year, I love jazz, and I love the big jazz orchestras, and it sounded so romantic. I did have a subscription to the Sunday Las Vegas newspaper, thinking I would go out to the Thunderbird or whatever the case where all these bands are playing. Little did I know that just about the time I was graduated, the whole industry collapsed in Los, and they found out that, you know what, they like a singer and a trio more than an 18-piece big band. And the work really dried up very quickly, so that was probably a wise thing. But my mother's mother, my maternal grandmother, she said, "I'm praying that you will meet a blonde." and lo and behold, I did. So all of a sudden, my plans in April were, I sort of like this girl. So I talked to my trumpet teacher at Indiana State, and he said, let me make a call, and if you are willing, let's drive to the University of Illinois and meet up with the trumpet teacher there. And of course, it's pretty late in the day. I mean, most people have been admitted by March or something of that nature. So we did, and I met the trumpet teacher there, and I played for him, and it was kind of a wonderful opportunity. And for some reason, they offered me an assistantship. More on the education side at first, but all of a sudden I was only going to be 2 hours away in Champaign-Urbana. This was a lot different than Las Vegas. So we did that and got married. I fell pretty head over heels for her, and pretty impetuous guy. So we stopped one night at the mall, and I said, let's go in and look at some jewelry. And we sort of collectively found a ring and kind of got engaged, and I realized afterwards I probably should have spoken to her father, which I did later, but I didn't at the night that I had the ring. So anyway, we got married at my church, which was a Methodist church. Seems like many of us have Methodist upbringings. And I can remember the minister. He's about half the height of Chris, and none of the personality of Haywood. He was an austere, Methodist minister. But for some reason, his ritual was, I take the grooms out for a round of golf. And so we played, golf, and I wasn't very good. So he probably had plenty of time to, speak to me about all the things that I need to be considering. So we got married. We finished up my graduate degree at the University of Illinois. Found a one-year job. I shouldn't say 1 year. It was a full-time job at Southern Utah State College. It's now a university, but when I was there, it was a college, and it was in Cedar City, Utah, about 50 miles north of St. George and Zion National Park and Bryce Canyons, and an unbelievable place. For sure, there were only 5 faculty in the music department, so I taught all the brass. I did this and I did this. So someone would say, did you ever teach high school? I said, I did for 1 year at a small college. Because you had to do sort of everything a little bit. Our dearest friend, this was heavy-duty Mormon country. If you happen to have a 6-pack of beer at the checkout counter, you would get some looks, because that. Well, no, not so much a lecture, but at any rate, dear friends, and my best friend was a German professor who had done his PhD at UNC Chapel Hill. There's just these funny little things, that connect our lives together. And he talked about the music program and the choral concerts. Oh, it was so great. So to make a long story short, The job was great because I got hired. You know, I had a position, but there weren't many opportunities. There were no jazz clubs in Cedar City, I can assure you. And, you know, you go to the store, and if there were records, it was the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. 6 of those, and that would be the record deal. So we jokingly say we probably went to Las Vegas 15 times in 1 year from where we live. And it wasn't for what you might think. They had a 24-hour record store. And they had craft and fabrics and craft. So we would get up like at 5 in the morning and drive like 200 miles to get to Las Vegas. I'd drop her off, and I went to the record store, and I'd say, I'll see you in about 3 hours. And, you know, we'd do our stuff, and then we'd go to Caesar's Palace, have lunch, and drive home. So anyway, that was kind of fun. So I'm going on too far. About February, I got a call, and it was from UNC Chapel Hill. And it was a percussion teacher, and he said, we've got a 1-year opening at UNC for a trumpet professor who can also do the jazz program. And he said, Illinois said they don't have anybody currently, but they have this guy that just graduated a year ago, and so we thought we'd call you and see if you'd be interested. I was 24 at the time, and you know, we sort of looked at each other, and I said, this would be a great place to retire, but it's really not kind of not the opportunity that I would like to have. And she said, I agree. So we applied and won the job and drove, you know, all across the country to get here. Little did we know that as we were driving, Katie was
In utero.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. And so we got here in the fall, and sight unseen, signed up to live in colonial apartments. And so, well, I'll finish the last part because it finally talks about Westminster. We're talking too much about us. At any rate, the first church we came to look at was right here. As you have all experienced, or I hope you've all experienced, we had literally just gotten out of our car and a couple came over to greet us. It was Ralph and Evelyn Kubrick. I think original founding of the 124 and something that did this. And they welcomed us and said, come on over, we want to introduce you to the pastor, Reverend Holderness. And he was a big man with hair back then, and so he was very gregarious and kind of said, well, what do you guys like, or something. And I said something as innocent as like, well, we're going to have a child soon, we love kids. He said, well, why don't you hit our junior church program? This is the first day we visited. We have not been inside the sanctuary yet. And I said, well, what does that entail? And he said, we'll work it out. And for those of you who have had a little time with Haywood, you might have a very similar story. So,
Well, that's a good segue, because the next few questions are about your experiences at Westminster.
Good.
I'm going to start off with, Jim and Susan and also Sue and Ralph talked about your fond memories of 15 years of summer musicals at Westminster. Yeah. Could you take
raise your hand if you went to a summer musical. And one. Even better.
Well, bounce it around and tell us something about those musicals, what they were, just a little bit of introduction for those of us who weren't here.
I can start with.
Oh, here.
That's good.
Wow, that was loud. I was the educator, and so we were talking about what to do with the next summer, what kind of program are we going to have. And I don't know why or who started the conversation about a musical. And there are great musicals that churches can do, like schools can do. And so the Christian Ed Committee talked about it and said, well, let's try, and people had ideas, ones they'd heard about, ones they'd seen. I forget what one we chose for the first, and Jim may remember because Jim was very involved with these musicals. But they became summer Sunday school, basically, except the present word class, of course, did its thing too. But the rest of it was for all ages. And so the children had parts and adults had parts. And the joy of that all summer long was amazing to watch with everybody jumping in. And then for the first Sunday school to start in the fall, at night we would have dinner and a potluck and then the show. And so a lot
That
of
was
people-
Rally Day.
And Rally Day. And anybody who saw one of those shows and saw like Hegren riding, or it was Paul riding his horse up the aisle, or Hegren is an amazing comedian, Don Hegren, who's no longer here, but in this church still. Was a great comedian, a great stand-up, and whatever play we had, he would star somewhere somehow. And then the music was amazing, and I know you had a big part of that. You want to talk about the music?
Well, I wasn't the music person, we'll pass it on to him, but I got to be props and occasionally an actress and, kind of anything. Yeah, costumes, but they were so fun, and it was almost like rock music. I mean, it was very contemporary, and I'm pretty sure the first one was 100% Chance of Rain. And it's, of course, Noah. And it was just, and I'll never forget Barbara Pennick, for those of you that may have known her from church, she would belt it out, it's going to rain! You would see the children and many adults kind of like, oh. That was the fun part of it, and just the different things and that we came up with. And when you had the whole summer to do it, some would show up, some would not. We read each other's lines, it didn't matter. We all sang whatever we could remember. And then there was the music band.
Well, all of that is true, and the intergenerational part was by far the magic of it. I mean, while we were just thinking about this tonight, I remember Jack Walker was in the one about Jonah, A Tale of a Whale. That was the name. And Susan got some of the
Carl Boxberger helped me
made
make
a giant whale
mouth.
mouth that would open up and so on and so forth. And I remember Jack had one line, 3 days and 3 nights. And that line would come in 10 lines too early. 7 lines too early. Or two lines too late. And we would laugh, so I just see Jack and I say, any chance of rain today? And so Claudia Draffen was our orchestra pianist, and she said, "Go ahead, slap the piano." I do this, and she said, "Just help me keep the beat." And so we did that. And there's another person that we may have forgotten about. Julie Fischel was a professional actress and a professor of drama at UNC. So she would come on board and, try to elevate all the scenes as much as they possibly could. And I guess I have 2 real quick stories. They're my favorites. So we did the Moses story. I think it was called Escape from Egypt County or something like that. And it was all cowboy themed, and Don Hagren was Pharaoh in his black Bart, kind of outfit, and our own Paul Ransford was Moses. So you know how Moses wrestles with God, and God, just tell me what to do. I don't know if I'm the person for this. Well, I was conductor, but I also had a speaking role in this. I was like the narrator. I was God. And I decided I would do God in John Wayne style. And so we're doing the play, and Paul never learned his lines. Ever. I mean, he'd sort of make him up or something like that, so I got him really good. So he said, Lord, I don't know what to do. Give me something. And I said, well, John Wayne, learn your lines. I'll tell you, we had to stop for about 5 minutes. We were all crying so hard. So a comedian shouldn't laugh at their own material, but I really did.
And he rode a stick horse the whole time.
Paul rode a stick horse. And so that stick horse was in his office. The kids all knew who it was. And, where's the horse? Where's the horse? I'm trying to think of on the other one, I'll maybe let you finish up that. About the year we had Hurricane Fran, the show went on.
It was so incredible. No electricity, no lights, no nothing, no mics. We decided it was still rally day. So we were going to have, everyone brought stuff from their freezers. And it was the best potluck we ever had. The very best.
Gas grills.
Power had been
We just
out
had
for
them
days.
lined up. Yep. And Lucy Stokes had access to ice maker or something. I don't know how. So she brought buckets and buckets of ice, and we had all these grills going. And at night, of course, we're in here or in the fellowship hall, and there's no light. Well, by golly, we had flashlights in every hand. We had candles and lanterns, and it just worked out beautifully. And then at the end, because again, none of us had power, none of us had ways to cook. It was like you took home a whole potluck. Does anybody need ice? Does anybody this? Anybody that? So I think it was probably one of the you were here.
Yeah, it was. It was very memorable.
Yeah.
And people were also saying, I have a chainsaw, you have trees, but when can I come? All over it. That was total sharing for days of getting people out of their houses.
Yeah, it was terrific.
And I have one more memory that this morning, I guess I was hearing about cats, but then it led to some other plays, including Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I recall Ralph's big moment as Jacob weeping over his son being taken away, and weeping and weeping and weeping and bellowing.
I'd forgotten my lines.
Well, along the same lines, there were lots of stories that came up of fond memories of trips to Mexico or disaster relief trips. So if you could tell us some of those stories, and I know Dottie's here, I don't see her right now, but yeah, your name came up more than once. But tell us some stories about that. I have some little things to remember.
Who wants to start? I'll start. We did the first trip in '91, I think. Vicki Patton somehow brought it up. She would like to, that was an idea. It sounded good, a mission trip. We had Dottie Bartholomew's brother there at Merida, who was a minister in a church there and could sponsor us and help us. And then he had a camp that he was responsible for in the jungle way south of him, and Tsukaka. And so there were the two of us leading, and then Ed Lilly, who was just a new doctor here in the church, and Lawrence Frank, who was an adult and out, but close enough he could go. So there were the four of us, and then like 20 teenagers. And they ranged in age from probably 14 on to high school. I don't think we had junior highs on that. And it was amazing. It was amazing in that the kids were, you know how they are, they act so funny until it's serious, and then they do everything right. And they're there, and they're up in the morning, and they're dressed, and they're ready to go to the site, and they're ready to have fun at night. And we had, the congregation had given us daily thoughts Bible verses of favorite, and then a thought about it. So we had little books, and every night we opened the book and had our lesson or our conversation about the day, and how many times what was on that day was perfect for that day. It was, even the kids noticed that how special the Spirit just was there. And so the problem, it wasn't a problem, it could have been, but I was the most Spanish speaking, which wasn't that much. Vicki had some, and the men had some. We did have the doctor, which turned out to be a good thing from time to time. And so after we would communicate with the people who were there on the farm, on the ranch, I guess it was, who ran took care of the groups who came, who only spoke Spanish, and then the church that we went to at night to do the Bible study, they only spoke Spanish. So the men from the church would come, and we would have a conversation, and after we would finish, I would turn to Vicki and say, okay, here's what I think is going to happen. I think that at 6 o'clock, they're going to come with the trucks and take us. You don't want to know how we got in the truck, how we rode. It's wasn't safe, but get in the trucks and go to the church and do the Bible study and then come back. Well, it's a miracle. Every time we had one of those conversations, and I thought I knew what we had just said, somehow we were on the same page. They did show up. We did get in the truck. Every night the girls would be in the same sundresses, but not on the same girl. So they had a lot of outfits by not taking too many dresses per girl. The final situation that we had was when we were due to buses were to come from Merida and take us to wherever we were going, I forget the name of, with the pyramids, and then we'd go on to Merida for the rest of the trip. Chichen Itza. And thank you. And so the men came and said, they called from Merida and the buses aren't coming. We said, oh, the buses aren't coming. And so we started to talk about with the men how we could work it out. And after the conversation, I looked at Vicki and I said, okay, so I think that tomorrow morning at 6, the chicken bus, or a version of it, will come with all the local people that ride it and pick us up. We do need to gather some cash, so all the kids started pulling out. It wasn't a lot, but we could get together and we could do that. And so we packed up, and the next morning, the bus came and we piled on and got to Chichen Itza, and then did get on to Merida and finish the trip. But it was glorious, and it had its moments, as you can imagine. And so then I never went, and other people went after that. So others of you may have your stories.
The first time I went, I was in 1995, I believe, and the thing kids slept in at night were hammocks. And Teddy Brown was the other woman on the trip with me, and Dean Lanier was the doctor, and Vern Lanier, yeah, not Dean, Vern Lanier, and then I can't remember who the fourth person was. But it was really good to have a doctor, because we had one kid who was always getting lost from the group, and we always kind of had to wander around where they were. And he also was the person that fell and cut his chin open. So we were grateful to have a plastic surgeon with us. So that was wonderful. And the thing they did in the daytime when I went is that they worked on construction, on building cement homes. And the other thing I remember about it is that all the kids slept in hammocks. But Teddy and I were lucky enough to find some single beds because I couldn't get out of a hammock. But it was a wonderful trip, and one of the thoughts from one of the kids that went, they were amazed at how joyous these people were when they had almost nothing. So that alone was a lesson for a lot of them.
Yeah.
I was also able to go, Kay Wellmeyer and Judy Bixby were our medical people, and we were out in the jungle area, and I'll never forget when Morgan came up to us and said, Miss Ketch, there are hippopotamuses in the jungle. I said, it's not that kind of jungle. I mean, come on. Nope, I've seen them. So we walked back with her a little ways. It was a giant sow that had sowettes or whatever. It looked as though we're still pregnant. There were all these, and I said, well, I can see why you might think that, but it's not a hippo. Don't worry about it. But we also did construction, and we were heavy with women. We learned to lift the 500-pound vegas, or beams, that were to go up on the roof of the Sunday school classroom that we were working on. We got so smart. Every other person, it took about 15 of us, and we would take off one work glove and put it here on the shoulder that you were putting the vega on. And again, there'd be all these women, and the men would put down ropes and haul up the beams, maybe 7 or 8 men, not ours, the Mexicans, who wore flip-flops. They had no work clothes. So it was decided long before by other teams, you leave everything. You leave your gloves, you leave your work boots, you leave your clothes. And the women were so delightful that would make our meals at night. They were giving us canned goods, because they didn't really have anything, but they felt like we should have a can of beans or whatever it was, because the church had, of course, paid for the supplies. So it was very powerful, and our evenings were spent playing soccer, of course, because you don't need language for that, and doing crafts.
And
And
tell
we,
me about the women and the crafts.
oh, the Mexican women were just delighted with the crafts, and we would talk, and it was junk. I mean, you know, you've seen my craft things. If you can get it for free, I'll make something out of it. But one of the most popular things that we almost didn't get through customs was, you know, the pool noodles.
Oh, yeah.
That, well, we had a humdinger full. It was just so many. And the people at customs were like, what is this for? What is this for? And I know they must look odd. But we cut them into sections, and we strung them on vines and rope and whatever. And we had the most beautiful wind chimes that made no noise.
There you go.
All these colors. And so we hung them from the second floor of the church, not the one we were building. And they would move, and we'd sing, and it seemed like they knew the rhythm. But lots of craft things that we did, and it was one of the most rewarding things I participated in.
It's very joyous to be in that atmosphere.
You're just smiling, you're sweating like one of the sowettes. you are joy-filled all the time.
The trip I took, Kinsey and Pete Jones. I don't remember the fourth person as well, but Pete became Pedro almost immediately. And I could not get comfortable in a hammock, but they did have scorpions around. But in order to get some sleep, I just slept on a mattress on the ground. And fortunately, no scorpions came to visit. But for many years in the church, there was this great picture of exactly what Susan was talking about. I'm at the bottom of the ladder. Kinsey's up about 3 or 4 feet. And then about 5 feet higher is Billy McAvoy.
Oh, my.
The strongest guy I think we had and it's just like buckets of cement are going up, you know, up and up like this. And I remember distinctly, we'd be like, whoo, we are tired. And the Mexican men would just say, take a break. And in about 15 minutes, they would do as much as we had done. It was unbelievable.
Do you remember playing in the market with the other musicians and guys got the buckets?
Yes. I brought a kind of a clinker trumpet, and you know they loved it. And I'd play anything that I could think of that would be Mexican or whatever. And you know they had a good time with it. And our bus driver, I think, was so taken with what was going on that one night he said, I think he wishes it had been his church that had been chosen. But he took us to his church, and we got out of the bus and walked through it and said what a beautiful church it was and all that. And then the final thing that we did, which was maybe one of the most lasting memories, many of the Mexican children had never been to the water. So we took them to the Gulf and bought them ice cream. And here's these kids wading about 2 feet out with an ice cream cone. Great.
One kid put it in his pocket to take. I promise. The other thing too, we must always show our gratitude to Dottie. She was the, I don't know, concierge extraordinaire. She made the arrangements. We knew what shots we needed and we didn't need it. She made sure that everyone was safe. I mean, if you're gonna fall and cut yourself, she couldn't take care of that, but you know, it just couldn't have gone smoother to go into a land where you don't know anyone and nobody knows you, and truly the grunt work was because of Dottie's ability to take care of us.
For sure.
So I want to ask another one that applies to all of you. You're all, well, we have 2 lawyers, but all of you are educators, and of different sorts, either working with youth groups, or teaching Sunday school, or leading Sunday school children's or adults, leading in Christian education. So tell some stories about that for us, please. You can trade off. Here, I'll get this back.
Well, I'll tell how I got there into Christian education. As you heard already, I majored in Spanish and minored in English to teach, and then did the degree in counseling, so I'm still like in schools. And then we moved here. When we were in Fort Lauderdale, basically we had 3 children, and I worked volunteer in the schools, but I didn't teach. We came here, and the 2 older kids were, even Matthew was 6 and in school full time. First time that I had everybody went to school all day. And so I was looking for what I was supposed to do next. I tried substitute teaching at Jordan. It was okay, and I worked in the counseling office at Jordan, and nothing was clicking, and I would sit in here because this was the sanctuary, in whoopee cushion chairs every Sunday, and I would pray. I need to hear something, and you all know how that is. You want it now. I want to hear it now. And so for a while, nothing. And then I was working with the Christian educator who was here. She was part-time, and her husband was here for a degree, and typically they were going to move away when he graduated. And so that job was coming open, and you didn't hear me say I trained in any theology. We had been teaching junior highs and Sunday school for years in Fort Lauderdale. I've been working in the church, but, training. So, but it just kept thinking, I like everything about it. I like the education, I like the people, I like the children, I like the adults, I like it all, but I'm not trained. So we took the middle schoolers, or whoever was the confirmation class that year, for pizza across the street when you couldn't get pizza over there. You still can, different pizza place. And it was the night they were going to meet with the session, so we just took them out for dinner before, and Haywood was there, and we were there, and some other of the leaders, and the kids, all around the table. And this is another Haywood story. So all of a sudden, I'm not sitting anywhere near Haywood, and Haywood yells down the table, "So what are you going to do with the rest of your life?" I mean, we're having pizza with teenagers, and they don't care, but so I blurted out, I'm kind of listening about that DCE job. He said, "Come see me in the morning." That's how they operated. So I did, and yeah. So
This is history.
So that was my Christian Ed story for real. And then it went on from there with lots of good stories about everybody in here, probably in some degree. But, anybody else?
Rally Day was also known as Sue's Zoo.
Okay, I'll back up to when we didn't have Haywood. We had supply pastors from Duke Divinity School, and we were very impressed with them. 4 or 5 of them. Bonnie was raised Catholic, and we got married in New York Avenue Presbyterian Church by my former roommate, who had just gotten ordained, and so she was married in the Presbyterian Church. We were waiting till the new pastor came. We met him, and we told him, this was his first Sunday, that we had been waiting, and Bonnie says he was at our house that afternoon. So anyway, we joined the church, of course. I got elected deacon the first year, and I got elected to the session the next year, I guess. And then I became the clerk, and then later on I served as clerk for 10 more years. Wait a minute. Dan Milam asked me why I still agreed to be clerk. Paul Ransford was standing there, and I said, well, first of all, because of the money. And secondly, I can say no to most other things. But memories of the church, we joined in 74, so it's long, long back. A lot of things have happened, good things and bad things. One of the things, wow, bad, I didn't mean to say that. One of the things, Donna Cooper's father, whose name I can't remember, Leroy, celebrated 100th birthday here at church with youth participating. And there was a dinner, and he recited a poem from memory. I can't tell you how long it took, but he knew it all.
Paul Revere.
Paul Revere. I don't remember. Anyway, it was
a long poem.
Because of the 2 generations, or the multi-generations.
The kids they dropped their jaws because he kept going. He had no notes, nothing. He just,
At 100.
who wrote that? The Ride of Paul Revere.
Midnight
Ride of Paul Revere.
There were other times with Haywood when I was called upon to help him do something. Like one was to tell the boys' choir that he couldn't stay here anymore. So he would want to make sure I was with him, lawyer and all. I don't know if you ever heard about the Do Nothing Club. Haywood was a member. He took me with him. It met over in a church in off of Federal Street. The other people were all like ministers or city councilmen or whatever. They did a lot, but they called themselves the Do Nothing Club. And if you used the title of somebody, you had to put a quarter in the thing. You couldn't just say attorney or reverend or whatever. And the other thing for me personally is Bonnie's memorial service. It couldn't have been better done, better handled. The clergy, the staff, and everybody on a real short term of time put it all together, and I'm so really grateful for it. And Jim was playing it there too.
Well, I think my best memories are those times when I felt seen. I felt like, yeah, sure, go ahead, try that. It'll be all right. And I give credit not only to Sue, but to Marita and people who listen to your ideas, and some of them have never been done, some will never be done again. But they were so receiving, and to me that's what faith is about. Faith is remaining open, understanding there's still a whole lot to learn. And one of the classes that I sort of made up as we went along, it went for 2 years. I had been to the APSI for projects we had done, and that was when Nancy Rozak was here as DCE. I went to class, and it was a female rabbi, and she was unbelievable, and her whole class was all in midrash, whole new concept. And I used to think I wanted to be Jewish. I like how they think of things and the way they do things, and so Anyway, the class went on and we talked about how because the Bible, the Torah, whatever, is a constantly changing and eternal volume, that you also must be in that. So I decided I would teach Midrash as a non-Jew in my own format. So we came back and there were a lot of young moms who had just had children, and the children would sometimes want to be in the nursery and sometimes not. So this class started at 10 o'clock on Sunday. Bring your coffee, bring your kid if you needed to in the stroller. And we based it on scripture, and for each of the scriptures that, again, I chose, there's no book on it, we had a children's book. And so they could take home a more contemporary story or check it out at the library. We put together, and then we did a craft. Of course we did a craft. And it was so much fun that I would have to literally flick the lights to get them to go to church. Because at different times, some were grandparents and mostly women, but again, it was that whole child-inclusive, intergenerational. Sometimes they talked about how that story, their daughter would love it or their son would love it, but it always went back to Scripture. And I felt like that was reaching the needs of our contemporary young women and their children, and of course it fulfilled my heart because I got to be in charge and pick the things, but we did have a very good time. And the church said, yeah, do it.
Would you say 5 minutes? We're getting close, and I want to put in another quote. There's a poster back there with a bunch of questions on it. Some of them are for everybody, and some of them are unusual questions that are only particular to the person. So if you want some ideas, when we're having our refreshments, you have more questions to ask. But I do have one more question for each of you before we close. This is what we closed the last question when we did the interviews too. And I'm fumbling here. It's easy. What are God's greatest gifts? Easy to ask. and also, you've thought about it before, so just to share, please.
The human race and the ability to love each other and live in peace. I said the ability to, I didn't say he guaranteed it. That's why he gave us Jesus.
It's hard to pick out the greatest gift, but I think the faith to know that no matter what I do, I will be loved by God, and I am okay. And everybody knows, almost if you know, that there are times when you need to know that. You need to remember that God sees us as perfect as He created us. And then our gift to God is to try to remember that and respond faithfully.
If I had one word to describe God, it would be love. Just like we should love Him with all our heart and mind and soul, and love our neighbor. Neighbor meaning anyone that needs that. His forgiveness over and over and over and over again.
My word in particular is forgiveness. We are always forgiven. And asking for forgiveness is not easy, nor is it easy to believe that you've done something that is worth forgiving, but it's always there.
This may sound like a recruitment to join the choir. It's not, but from that vantage point, either I'm playing trumpet with the organ or I'm now singing with the choir, God's gift of community is particularly, I think, a rich one. And there are so many times, I was invited to help with communion last week, and these are my people. These are people I know, I've known for years, to have the privilege to hand them a piece of bread and, you know, be part of a community is the best gift ever.
I sell words for a living, so I'm going to use one word, life.
Hi.
Well, thank you so much. Now you can ask more questions and visit and have some refreshments. And remember a couple things. One are the questions that are over there, but also there's a list of links that you can use if you want to look to the longer programs these folks have done. It is true that there were quite a few stories that were a little different, more elaborate this time. It's really fun for me to hear. So thank you so much.